Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Justin Bibelan aka Organism 118 and welcome to this episode of Understanding Environmental Science. So last week we discussed about the basic concepts in environmental science, sustainability, which is the central theme on understanding environmental science. We have also the three principles of sustainability, the key components of sustainability, and the last one are the three types of our natural resources. For today, I will be discussing to you about ecological footprints and how ecological footprints are affecting our Earth today. It is the reality for today that our ecological footprints are actually, we are depleting and degrading more of our Earth's natural capital. And it is really the reality that we face nowadays. We are living unsustainably. And because of this, we are actually degrading our environment and as well as depleting our Earth's natural capital. According to a large and growing body of scientific evidence, we are living unsustainably by is it wasting or depleting and degrading the Earth's natural capital. And this is what we know as environmental degradation or natural capital degradation. In many parts of the world, we are actually depleting our forests by forest degradation. We are also experiencing right now the problem of air pollution, climate change, okay, and even acidity of ocean right now is actually increasing due to water pollution. We have also species extinction, and also there are some coral reefs in our marine resources that are actually dying because of degradation of our marine resources. Okay, so this is actually the reality, the sad reality that we are facing right now, and this is our ecological footprints. Okay, normally our renewable natural resources are degrading, and there will be in time that will that these natural resources or these renewable resources will eventually decrease and we will not obtain a sustainable yield or what we call the renewable yield of this natural resources. Okay, in 2005 the UN released its Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, and this Millennium Ecosystem Assessment is actually a 4-year study by 1,360 experts from 95 countries. So according to this study, human activities have degraded or overused about 60% of the Earth's ecosystem services, mostly since 1950. And also that the report's summary statement warned that human activity is actually putting such a strain on the natural functions of the Earth that the ability of the planet's ecosystem to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. Okay, the report also concluded that we have scientific, economic, and political solutions to this problem, but we could implement them within a few decades. Okay, so this is actually the reality that we are facing right now, and it is actually based on the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which is a 4-year study that was researched by 1,360 experts from 95 countries. So we are actually degrading and our environment right now because of anthropogenic activities. Okay, when we say anthropogenic activities, these are actually human activities. Okay, and we are overusing our renewable resources to the extent that the nature can no longer restore it because we are actually overusing it. So that's the time that we are actually depleting our renewable resources. Okay, so and this is the time that the future generations should not take this for granted, because at a future time we will have no resources that we can get in the environment. Okay, so this is the time that we should act right now, and we should have the decision to really implement solutions regarding the problems in our environment, as well as the problems on our ecological footprints. Okay, to fully have solutions, or to establish solutions about ecological footprints, we should find first where is the sources of this pollutants, or where is the sources of this degradation. And one of the major environmental problem that we are facing right now is actually pollution. Okay, so when we say pollution, it is contamination of the environment by any chemical or other agents such as noise or heat, to a level that is harmful to the health, survival, or activities of humans or other organisms. So basically, when saying pollution, it is actually we are incorporating pollutant or contaminant to the environment in such in such a way that these pollutants are actually detrimental to the health and have a negative effect on the environment because of its concentration, or because of its level of amount that is already unacceptable to the human, and also to the environment, or it's already in the amount that is already too much for the environment to handle, and also too much for the human to accept, because it will have health effects on humans. Okay, so it has an harmful effects on humans. So these pollutants are actually, when we say pollutants, these are any chemical or agent at a certain concentration or amount that can cause harm to the living organism. So what are these sources of pollutants? So it could have from volcanic eruptions, okay? Because during volcanic eruptions, or after in volcanic eruptions, okay, there are actually a lot of toxic gases that are actually released on the environment. Okay, so the smoke that you're actually released, okay, in or gases that are released on the in volcanoes, those are actually toxic gases, and it's actually in high concentration. And also we have particulates or particulate matters, we're also evident on that scenario, or in that situation. Okay, they are actually released on the environment, and all of these are have has high level of contaminants, or high level of pollutants, and they're actually detrimental to the health, and has a harmful effect to the health and also to the environment. Okay, so examples are the volcanic eruption, and also the factories. Okay, the factories also are the main sources also of the pollutants that are actually present on the air. Okay, and also if these factories will dump their chemicals, okay, so these pollutants or these chemicals will eventually flow from the stream then down to the river. Okay, at a high concentration in the air and in water in our body, in our bodies, or in our bodies, almost any chemical can cause harm and be classified as pollutant, especially if those chemicals that we are dealing are actually like heavy metals, okay, which are non-biodegradable. So once they are in our body, it cannot be degraded, so therefore it will stay longer in our body, which can cause some illnesses inside our body. Okay, so it can be carcinogenic, or will have a negative effect, or even a worse effect in our health. Okay, so the pollutants we produce come from two types of sources. So what are these sources? Number one is the point sources. So when you say point sources, they are single and the identifiable sources. Okay, so we can identify them, that where is the sources coming from? What would be the main source of this kind of pollutant? Okay, because these are actually point sources. They are single identifiable sources. So for example, are the smokestacks of a coal burning power or industrial plant. Okay, So those smokestacks that are coming from the factories, okay? So we can identify them that that factory is actually the source of that air pollution or that air pollutant, okay? At a local environment, okay, when there are actually smokestacks coming from factories or a coal burning power or industrial plant, so we can identify that that industrial plant is the source of the air pollution, or that industrial plant is the source of the chemical dumping, okay, of these chemicals, because they're actually they that factories have a pipe, okay, or a drainage, okay, that will actually drain their chemicals down to the river. Then we can say, or we can actually observe that those drainage were coming from that factories, and therefore that is identifiable that that factories or that factory is the source of that contaminants or of that pollutants, okay. So a drain pipe of a factory and an exhaust pipe of an automobile, okay? Like for example, an exhaust pipe of an automobile or vehicles, okay? So there are also point sources of pollutants, okay? Or a drain pipe of a factory. So that's what I have said, okay? That we can identify them that they are the point source of that pollutant. Other and the last type of the sources of pollution is what we call the non-point sources. Okay, so when we say non-point sources, they are actually dispersed and often difficult to identify. Why? It's because we don't know that where is the source of this pollutant. Okay, like for example, pesticides and particles of topsoil blown from the land into the air, and the runoff of fertilizers, pesticides, and trash from the land into the streams and lakes. Okay? In this case, we don't know that where is these pesticides coming from, because there are a lot of there are a lot of farms, and especially here in Negros, or even in different places, there are actually a lot of farms that are actually using pesticides. And if the river is already been contaminated, or a topsoil or our soil is already been contaminated and already been degraded because of these pesticides, we can no longer identify that whose farm are using this kind of pesticides, because there are actually a lot of farms that are using pesticides, and we don't know because they are actually running off. Okay, so from where it is actually the source is, it's actually just drained, okay, from that source down to the downstream, okay, and we don't know if where is it, or where is this main source of this kind of pollutants, okay, because it's just actually drained, or it's just actually being put, okay, or downstream, okay, into the streams and into the land, and then to the lakes, or even to the river. Okay, so we don't know where is exactly the point source of this pollutants, because these are actually dispersed, and they're actually uneven, difficult to identify. Another example is the plastics that are actually floating in the ocean, okay, or even dumped in the rivers. Okay, so we don't know, and even in the oceans actually. Okay, so we don't know that this trash in the river, where is it came from? Okay, because there are a lot of actually plastics that are floating, and even trash in the river, or even in the ocean. Okay, so we don't know where is the sources. Okay, especially if all of these sources are actually coming from different homes, or coming from different companies, or even buildings. Okay, because they're actually also those they're actually the ones also that will have that will contribute to this trash thrown in the ocean or in the sea. Okay, so we don't know that where is this trash coming from. So that became a non-point source water pollution. And because of this non-point sources, no, it is actually very hard to identify or to control or to prevent this kind of pollution, because we don't know where is it coming from, because it is a non-point sources. So for point source for point sources kind of pollution, we can actually identify them, and therefore we can control or prevent them, because we knew already that this factory or this industrial plant is the main source for this kind of pollutants. Okay, so we have tried to deal with pollution into actually two very different ways. And one of this approach is what we call the pollution cleanup. Okay, so when you say pollution cleanup, it involves the cleaning or diluting of pollutants after we produce them. Okay, like for example, for tall smokestacks, okay, in factories, they're actually using tall smokestacks to dilute or reduce the local effects of air pollutants. Okay, so that on where the factory is actually located, okay, the air pollutants will eventually be released to the upper atmosphere, okay, because it's actually tall smokestacks, okay, so that on that kind of local environment of where the factories are, there will be a reduced or a diluted effect of the air pollutants. However, the disadvantage of these tall smokestacks is that it actually increases air pollution in downwind areas. Okay, what do you mean by downwind areas? So wherever the wind blows, okay, in that direction, so that means that area there will now be affected by the air pollutants that's actually coming from the tall smokestacks, okay, because they're actually being blown by the wind on that direction. Okay, so that area now there will be affected by that air pollutant. Okay, the second approach is what we call pollution prevention. Okay, pollution prevention is that efforts focus on greatly reducing or eliminating the production of pollutants. So this is actually more on political solutions. Okay, for example, we can enact pollution control laws that ban or set low levels for the emission of various pollutants into the atmosphere or into the bodies of water. Okay, so that is how we deal with pollution nowadays. We can have pollution cleanup or pollution prevention. Okay, now let's move on to what we call the tragedy of the commons. So what is actually the tragedy of the commons? We are degrading the commonly shared renewable resources, and we call this as what we call the tragedy of the commons. Okay, so some renewable resources, known as the open access renewable resource, are not owned by anyone and can be used by almost anyone. So examples are the atmosphere, okay, open oceans and its fishes, and the Earth's life support system. So other less open renewable resources, these are actually often called the shared resources, which are grasslands, okay, forests, and streams. And many of these renewable resources have been environmentally degraded, okay, because we can actually access them. Okay, we can really easy to access them. We can easily get our resources there because it is actually not owned by anyone. It is public, okay, and we can use it with almost anyone. So we can get our resource in the ocean. We can get our food in the ocean, like the fish is there, okay, and if this environment is like it's an open environment, and we can have shared resources, then we can actually get our resources there. Okay, so by this kind of scenario, we can actually degrade our renewable resources or our environment, and such degradation is what we call the tragedy of the commons. This is actually by Gareth Hardin. That this tragedy of degrading our environment because of renewable resources that are being shared, or we have an open access of these renewable resources, is what we call the tragedy of the common by Gareth Hardin. Okay, degradation of such shared or open access renewable resources occurs because of each user reasons. So we have our reason, like for example, the little bit that I use or pollute is not enough to matter, and anyway it's a renewable resource. Anyway it's a renewable resource, so it doesn't matter if I use it. The nature will just restore it. Okay, so that is our reason. When the number of users is small, this logic works. Of course, if you have only a small population living on that kind of environment, okay, so eventually the nature will be able to restore that, although you use that shared resources or open access renewable resources. Okay, the nature can be able to restore that. But however, if the cumulative effect of large numbers of people trying to exploit a widely available or shared resource can degrade our environment and eventually exhaust or ruin it, then no one can benefit from it. And that is what we call the tragedy of the commons, because that is tragedy. If there is already a large population living on that kind of environment, when all of those people, okay, living there, they have their own needs, they have their wants. Okay, then we get the resources on the environment. Okay, when we have that access on that resource, in order for a large numbers of people to get that kind of resource, then that is tragedy. Okay, because the result of that is that we can actually degrade our environment.